Hey, everybody, and welcome to Tuesday. Matthew, last night, the Atlanta Falcons blew two 21-point leads, but ended up at the end of the day, they were there.
Yeah, that's a game. It feels like the Rams almost had it taken from them. In a sense, it feels like they were on the bad end of some calls there at the end. But there's a certain amount of credit that's due to Atlanta, given the dynamics around it and really the way that team's played this year. It would have been understandable if they hadn't shown up last night, but they did, and that's really impressive because there's a lot of young players on that team, especially on the defensive side.
Well, I don't think there's any question about it. What we're seeing from them is they got fight, and that's all you can ask for, right?
Yeah.
That being said, both of us have been on the Matthew Stafford for the MVP bandwagon, and over the last 5 games, they just haven't cut it.
Yeah, I still don't understand that, though, because Matthew Stafford went into last night as he's still a pretty decent favorite for the MVP. I think he was minus 380 going into the game last night. Coming out of the game now, I think Drake May is somewhere around a minus 400 favorite. I don't get that. His numbers don't compare. I think even with Matthew Stafford's interceptions last night, the 3 of them, they're still level on interceptions. Stafford has, I still think he has 10-ish more touchdowns than Drake May does, and he beats him in passing yards as well. Matthew Stafford's had a much tougher schedule than Drake May does. I'm all for the moving of the MVP markets, but that is a great overreaction to one game late in the season, and that's really what I don't like about the MVP award, and to be honest with you, the Heisman Trophy as well.
Sure.
Is these late results just have far too much impact on the overall voting and odds.
Yeah, this is a good clip to have here right now for our AI folks, because it's kind of like, 6 weeks in, Baker Mayfield was the favorite. 3 weeks after that, it was Jordan. It was Love in Green Bay. Then it became Stafford. Okay. He's been the longest tenured member of that group until the last couple of games. Last night was not a great game, but it wasn't a bad game. Especially if you look at those last, I don't know, what was it, 4 plays to end the game. Two of those could have been catches. And one of them was an out-and-out pass interference that didn't get called.
Yeah, and to the counterpoint, because I know I started it mentioning the refs, is there's a pass that Matthew Stafford missed on that drive as well that would have planted them right in field goal range, plenty of time left on the clock. He was right at the boundary. Heck, he may have even scored.
Right.
So there is some aspect of you got to control what you can control. If you're the Rams, and Matthew Stafford has to hit that throw, but they did get a bit of a screw job from the referees in terms of the pass interference. That holding call was really bad. I was not a fan of that. It was just for a guy that hadn't played left tackle all that well for most of the night. Humphreys just kind of owned him on that play, and he got punished for it. I was not a fan of that, but push comes to shove. I think if you're Los Angeles, I said they had nothing to gain by playing the Falcons last night. Boy, could I not have been more wrong. I really thought it was going to be a bit of a runaway for LA, but again, credit to what the Falcons did. And I think LA, maybe they haven't played fantastic over these past few games. I think there's an obvious acknowledgement to that, but I think that may be a different kind of a wake-up call for the Rams going into the playoffs.
I'll tell you what, the one team that's impressed me, and again, we can flag this one for AI too, is the 49ers. I mean, they've had a lot of injuries, yet they just keep chugging.
Yeah, and again, they're a big reason why I still believe Matthew Stafford should be ahead in the MVP race, because that NFC West as a division as a whole is the best division in football this year. I don't think there's any question about that. All three teams at one point or another had like an overwhelming majority odds to make the one seed. I know that the Niners and the Seahawks are pretty much split on that. I'm pretty sure the Seahawks have a better split than the Niners do in terms of getting that number one seed. But it just goes to show the power in that NFC West. And San Francisco is getting healthy, and San Francisco is building momentum into the playoffs. And Kyle Shanahan, he may not have gotten over the hump, but boy, he's been a winner many times before. I think he's gotten San Fran there twice, and obviously he was the OC in Atlanta when they made it.
Well, he lost 11 games last year. The team was decimated, and now they've won. They've won 11 games. So it's it's a much different situation for San Francisco now than it was last year. But consistency is what you're talking about, and you can't fight the fact that Kyle has been very consistent.
No.
It's been there. The Rams have been beat up, and last night we saw a team in Atlanta, as you said. They could have just mailed it in, but they didn't. They continued to play hard and ended up winning the game, and which sets up a totally bizarre scenario where if the Rams beat the Saints this coming weekend, and the Saints are hot, Carolina wins the division regardless of whether Tampa Bay wins or not.
Yeah, that's a odd scenario now that Atlanta created for the NFC South.
Sure.
And
if it wasn't bad enough.
Yeah, it's just like it's an interesting scenario in terms of the NFC South and what it means for the playoffs. But at the same point, it's also not that interesting because I don't think it's going to be that interesting with either Tampa Bay or Carolina when they get in the playoffs, because I'm not going to expect them to do anything. I don't think any of the general public is going to expect them to do anything. So, and I mean, you can't really even like sit back and give them credit for a good season. If they do make the playoffs and lose in the first round, because it's just like, well, you're the one that survived it somehow.
Right. Well, I mean, the irony of this is that Atlanta may be able. Well, Raheem. I don't think Atlanta's going to fire Raheem Morris. Tampa Bay might fire, Todd Bowles.
Yeah, and I don't like that. I think of the two coaches that you just mentioned, Raheem Morris is far less deserving of a job than Todd Bowles is. Raheem Morris, career worst winning percentage of any head coach, I believe. That's logged more than like 30 games as a head coach, somewhere in that neighborhood. Yeah, but he's got a career low winning percentage in terms of NFL head coaches, and Todd Bowles has had a lot of success there in Tampa Bay. Again, I just think they missed on that offensive coordinator hire.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think what they did by promoting from within, which is admirable from one standpoint, but you can't replace. Yeah, Dave Canales, who may end up beating you in the in the race for the division, and then of course Liam Cohen, who's having a hell of a year as the first year coach in Jacksonville. I don't think anybody could have known that they would have been great head coaches. What everybody knew was that they were very good offensive coordinators, and I think what the Bucs did by just elevating their quarterbacks coach to offensive coordinator proved to be a pretty bad situation for them. Now, albeit they were beat up, got that noted, but so were the 49ers, and they figured out how to win. So all they had to do was win one of 3 games, and they couldn't do it.
Yeah, and I mean that again, that Miami team they played on Sundays is not a fantastic product themselves. So that's a game that you feel like it. I think you got to be upset if you're Tampa Bay in the way you lost that game because you gave it up early, and you find your groove in the second half. But you can't be in that kind of a mode trying to make that kind of a comeback in a must-win game like they had. And now they're paying for it because they're not in charge of their own destiny.
And now we are. Let's flag this one as as a clip we want, and that is Pittsburgh and the Ravens. I read a very interesting article in the Athletic this morning that in many circles that it looks like it might be a survivor thing. True, I mean, whoever wins this goes to playoffs and the other one stays home. But does John Harbaugh or Mike Tomlin get fired after this game? Whoever loses.
It's definitely possible. I think you mentioned it yesterday. I think we're both in agreement that we don't see the Rooney family firing Mike Tomlin based off this year. Now, granted, if he doesn't make the playoffs, it would definitely lead them to be a little bit more inclined to do so. The John Harbaugh one feels like one that is much more likely, just in terms of the overall fan reaction. I think to Harbaugh, I think the owners in Baltimore are a little bit more apt to listen to their fan base than the Steelers are. I think the Steelers have done it a certain way for a very long time, and it doesn't matter what the fans are necessarily feeling like. That unless they really start hitting them where it hurts, and that's the wallet and the ticket sales, then I don't see any reason that Pittsburgh will change.
For those of you who haven't had a chance to look at it, it's another flag this segment. Lamar Jackson. There was a article, and I highly recommend people who haven't read it take a look at Mike Preston's work in the Baltimore Sun. Mike is an award-winning writer. He is not prone in any way, shape, or form to hyperbole. He's also not prone to write stuff that doesn't exist. And he wrote a pretty strong article the other day about the difference between how some people are treated on the Ravens team and Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson tends to stay up late and like to play video games, at which point when he shows up for the early morning practices, sometimes sleeps in meetings. I mean, all of this is leading up to the fact that this is the year where Baltimore need to go ahead and renegotiate his contract. We talked a little bit about that before. Right now, if they don't touch it at all, it's $74 million head against the cap. You got 53 players on a team. You're going to lose people unless you reduce that cap. The point being, how far down can they get it, right? And how is that? So these negotiations become very, very difficult. And I don't know, Mike's, as I said before, Mike is an incredibly reputable writer. I believe everything that he writes. I mean, he's not been wrong. He's followed the Ravens since the moment they hit town. Now, where did he get this? Right? I mean, did the team leak this to him? Did some players they're upset with Lamar leak it? I guarantee you Lamar didn't do it. So, how does this take you into the offseason as to what do you do with Lamar Jackson? Do you try to sign him and renegotiate that deal down? Or do you move on from Lamar Jackson?
Yeah, I would be very hard pressed to say you move on from a guy that's been as productive and as good as Lamar Jackson has been in his time in Baltimore. I just find it to be you'd have to show me some tangible evidence, I think, a progression in order to justify that. I understand wanting to move off the maybe as high of a cap number as he has, because we talked about it before, how the quarterback contract can severely handicap you in terms of roster building as a GM,
right?
And how typically when quarterbacks in particular sign those massive deals, that there's oftentimes a lot of collateral damage that happens around it. If you don't believe me, go check out the Kansas City Chiefs and see how their weapons have decimated throughout the years. Now, granted, they've been able to sustain their success, but that doesn't mean that their offensive weapons haven't taken a hit. And I think something similar is probably going to happen in Baltimore because that wide receiver room still is lacking something. I feel like the defense is solid. They've done a pretty good job drafting and signing there. But again, the receivers, I still think that room needs an upgrade if they want to reach where they want to get to. And it's an interesting year for the Lamar Jackson, the Josh Allen, and Joe Burrow is exempt because But these were all guys that were like they're jockeying right there with Patrick Mahomes, and because he was there, none of them reached the Super Bowl. Well, this was the year Patrick Mahomes was gone, and now only one of them, possibly two, but as of right now, only one of them has the opportunity to make it to the Super Bowl with Patrick Mahomes sitting at home.
True. Now, we don't know because it's Tuesday and the team's back, whether Lamar's going to practice or not. I would say this year, one of the problems to evaluate Lamar is over the past 2 years, he's gotten hurt. This year, more than last year. So, we don't know where that situation stands. We don't know how much mileage do they have left on Lamar. I'm not saying get rid of Lamar Jackson. That's a fool would do that. But how you renegotiate that contract and how you add that receiver into that receiver room you're talking about. And it wouldn't hurt to have a better offensive line for them too. Because, they pound the rock with Derrick Henry all they can, and that works. But there's a difference in pass blocking and offensive run blocking. And that's where the problem has been for Baltimore is protecting the quarterback because they run block a great deal better than they pass block.
Yeah, and that's another aspect of this Ravens team that's interesting is how much longer does Derrick Henry really have at the form that he's in? I think he started to see some regression this year. We could gather back next year and I could be eating my words as he continues to do what he's done throughout the majority of his career. But it's just not really feasible in terms of timelines. It happens it gets everybody eventually, and you're running out of the best years of Derrick Henry here in Baltimore, and so that's another factor that's going to play in when the offseason does come in Baltimore.
Well, the window does close quickly, and right now they need to work out that salary situation. I think they will. But even if they do, okay, let's say they get as much of a cap friendly deal as they can, you're still talking $50 to $60 million cap. And that's a problem.
It definitely is. But it's one where it's a problem that you pretty much just have to take on. Like you can't afford. Yeah, you can't afford to have a guy sitting there in Baltimore. He's been your franchise quarterback for this long. He hasn't really shown. Like if there were certain signs of regression, then you get it. But there's just zero justification behind moving on from Lamar Jackson.
No, I wouldn't be advocating it. What I'm trying to say here is you keep Lamar Jackson. Obviously, you have Derrick Henry on the last year of his contract. What you find out in cases like this is you start to look at where are the rookies, right? And the reason for that is they're on the rookie contracts. So you're going to save money keeping them. Where you're going to lose money normally is at the line. Sometimes it's the linebackers. Sometimes, where can you cut? You got a 53-man roster. Most of the time, 25% of that roster turns over. That's pretty. That's the league average. It's a little higher. I mean, when you look at what Andy Reid and his gang has been able to do in Kansas City, is all those years of going to the playoffs and all those years of getting to the Super Bowl. Same with Belichick, being able to do it by recreating and finding people that fit your system. And I think that's where John and I have great respect for Eric DeCosta, the general manager of the Ravens. If there's a way to figure it out, he'll figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
But it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough sledding. If they win and end up being in the playoffs, well, there's going to be some interesting situations with regard to, guys like, let's see, who would be you got tight ends. You've got a number of players where you may want to keep 2 or 3 of these guys, but you're not going to be able to keep. You have to keep one of them or 2 of them.
Mm-hmm.
Mark Andrews might be gone. Not because he's not good, just because they can't afford to keep him.
Yeah, I think a guy like I say like it's but double up. But Isaiah Likely is a tight end that came on for them last year, really when Mark Andrews was absent. And since Mark Andrews has been healthy this season, he's fallen behind a little bit in terms of his number production. So he's probably a guy where they'll look to move off him because of the number that, not even the number, but I believe he's still going to be under contract. And
yeah, he's not a free agent yet, but they could trade him.
Yeah,
or they could release him.
Yeah, the trade package they would fetch for Isaiah Likely would probably be a little bit better than I think some people realize.
Yeah, I wouldn't trade Isaiah Likely, but I would. I'm not Eric DeCosta, but I would. I think I would. If I could get a 7th round or 6th round draft choice for Mark Andrews, I'd take it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you'd probably fetch a little higher price than that.
Maybe
potentially.
Yeah,
but his age is definitely a factor. His injury history is also a factor. But they're going to have tight end is a room. I think running back's probably a room where they're going to have to make some cuts because guys like Keaton Mitchell, tore his ACL, but before that last year he came on really strong, and he was a speed guy, and if he's a guy that doesn't get his speed back after that ACL tear, then it's going to greatly diminish his value. I
think that part of what we've got to worry about, or certainly concern ourselves with, as we move forward here on this Tuesday, is there really isn't, and we've mentioned this, and flag this clip, that there's not a dominant team in either league at this point in time.
No, there isn't, and but I also feel like there's a dominant tier that has resided in the AFC for the past few years. Talked about that group of Burrow, Mahomes, Jackson, Allen, all those guys. And I think the power has just shifted to the NFC. I don't know if that's a one-year thing and the power will shift back to the AFC, but right now the power lies in the NFC, as we discussed, particularly in that NFC West.
Yep, and the competitive balance is there, I think, from all of it, both on the AFC side and the NFC side. And I think that's what's going to make this might be one of the more entertaining playoff situations that we've had in a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. And talked about, you heard Joe Buck and Troy Aikman talk about it last night. There is going to be an advantage if you end up being the 5 seed over the 6 seed in the NFC bracket, because if you're the 5 seed, then you're going to get that first game against either Carolina or Tampa in the playoffs. And again, not to disrespect them, but objectively on paper, it's an easier game to play than if you have to go to Philadelphia.
Well, they're a sub-500 team, so let's just call it what it is, right?
Yeah,
they've stumbled their way to the title. So, by the way, in Brady's last year, they won the title also as a sub-500 team.
Yeah.
It's not like it hasn't been done, but it's not exactly the way you want to. You don't want to enter the playoffs winning, one of your last 6 games.
Absolutely not.
Really not. It's not usually a way you want to, get things going for the playoffs. But anyway, let's downshift. in a couple days, tomorrow is New Year's Eve, and tomorrow night in Arlington, Texas, the University of Miami and Ohio State will take on each other in the Cotton Bowl. Let's flag this one for a clip. I'll tell you, um, it's going to be interesting. I don't know that a lot of people are obviously on Ohio State, but Miami and Ohio State have had history, and we're not talking about fun history. They don't like each other. They've played games that have been consequential, including a national championship game, which many still think that Miami should have won because they thought they got jobbed by the officials in that game, and it ended. It ended for at least a short period of time the career of Willis McGahee, who got hurt in that game and lost a lot of money from going on his draft situation. But the history of Miami and Ohio State, even though they've only played, I think it was 4 times. It's 2-2. But even though it's just 4 times, they haven't exactly endeared themselves to each other.
Yeah, you could also kind of mark that as that game was more of like the rise of the Buckeyes and the fall of the Hurricanes. Just where both those programs went after that game. Obviously Ohio State where it is where it is now. Miami hasn't won an ACC title. They have not returned to the national title game since that game, I believe.
Yep.
Could be off on that.
You're right.
Born, so so they haven't made it to a national title game, and now looking to reclaim it. I will say, at least in terms of the Ohio State thing, and I'll get to Miami in a minute. I've seen clips, people talking about how talented Miami is along the line of scrimmage, and I think all that stuff is of note. I think I know how talented Ohio State is, but I'm really not that sure. I still feel like I have a lot to learn about this football team because of their 2 best games against Indiana and Texas. They scored 10 and 14 respectively. So they have not shown up offensively for either of their biggest games and the best defenses they played. And this Miami defensive front is probably up there with Indiana and Texas. I think they're bigger. I think they're more physical. They may even be a little bit better than those fronts that they played in those two in Texas and Indiana. And so I don't really know. I think Ohio State's a 9.5-point favorite. That might be a little rich for my liking in terms of the betting. And I'm not by any means picking Miami outright, but I would like to learn a little bit more about Ohio State tomorrow.
In 2011, Miami beat Ohio State, which is the last time they played each other, 24-6. In 2010, Ohio State beat Miami 36-24. And let's move up. The emotional game of the rivalry was the one we talked about, which was the Fiesta Bowl, which was the national championship game in 2002 when Ohio State won that game, 31-24 in 2 overtimes. And then we had the 89 game, which Miami won 23-12. And then in 77, the first time they played each other, which was a 10-0 win for Ohio State. So I stand corrected. Ohio State leads that series by a 3-2 measure at this point. But I don't know what to think of Ohio State. I really don't. I don't know if they've been tested or not. I do think that Miami's front line, and we talked about this before, on both sides of the ball is pretty, formidable.
Yeah.
But that being said, Ohio State's defense is pretty much the same defense they had that won the national championship last year.
Yeah, so, it may be better now than the one that won the national championship last year. I would say I would be nothing short of shocked if both of these teams broke 20 points. It just doesn't seem like that kind of game. Maybe you want to blame the win for the passing offensive result in College Station last week for Miami. But at the same time, I haven't been all that impressed with Carson Beck against the better competition he's played. I'll be interested to see if he can show up for this one, because when he's really faced a lot of pressure As a passer, he hasn't had success, and that's dating back to his time at Georgia.
Right.
When pass rush gets home with consistency, he's a guy who's not very mobile and pretty locked into that pocket. And so they're going to have to establish the run in a similar manner that they did in College Station. Otherwise, I don't think they're going to have a chance, because there's a chance that Miami's defense is good enough to hold Ohio State's offense down below 20 points, but that means you have to get to that 20-point threshold.
Yeah.
And if one of these two teams does do it, I think that's probably going to be the one that comes out on top. I think once they reach that 20 number, then that's probably going to be your winner.
Well, I think the key here, too, is we have to see balance. Mm-hmm. Carson Beck, at least, again, you've seen him a whole lot more than I have because of the Georgia thing. But Carson Beck has been, to me, at least when he is successful, he's been his most successful when he's been able to play action pass.
Mm-hmm.
So if Miami gets a running game, then Carson seems to be very comfortable in that, ability to, keep Ohio State, or anybody for that matter, but tomorrow Ohio State, from chasing him around the field. He's not the most mobile quarterback, and he tends to get happy feet whenever people come chasing him. He makes his mistakes when that happens. Now, if they have a running game, and it's a more balanced attack, then Carson Beck can come sit back there, and he's got the weapons to pick you apart. That being said, Ohio State to me is a much faster, much more physical defense than I think that anybody they've played all year long.
Yeah, I think they handle the A&M defense fairly well last week, all things considered. But again, it's left something to be desired, I think would be the way that I would describe it in terms of that offensive result. But they grinded. Whoa, there we go. Grinded on Texas A&M last week, and eventually they started breaking through, mainly with Mark Fletcher on the ground. And it's going to have to be a similar circumstance here with Ohio State. Is they're going to have to grind away, and really it's going to have to be something where they're in striking distance late. Because if Ohio State's able to build a lead, I don't think either of these offenses have the firepower, based on the defenses that will be across from them, to come climbing back in this game.
Let's take a second and thank our buddy Zach Bobo at ERA Sunrise Realty for sponsoring the show. Zach is a great guy. He's somebody you ought to, if you're going to get a house down in the Southeast, in Georgia, Alabama, Florida, North Carolina, South Carolina, you need someplace in to go for the winter, or someplace you want to go if it's in the northern part of Georgia or the mountains of North Carolina, then Zach's your guy. So he can get you your first house ever or your forever home. So give Zach a call there at 770-876-2790. That is, of course, to get a hold of Zach, you can get him 770-876-2790. It's on the crawl below us, and so you can write it down at any time. Meanwhile, back at the ranch. Quick question. Steve Sarkisian brought up a point back a while ago when he was making his case as to why Texas should be in the playoffs, which actually isn't a bad question, and that is, he felt that because they opened the season with Ohio State and didn't play a cupcake the entire season, that they got penalized for it. I believe that we're probably going to start seeing less and less of the games against the smaller colleges, and we talked about this in the past, which might be a flag to flag this one, but as a clip, because you get penalized for it.
Yeah, you do. I struggle with saying you get penalized for playing that game, actually. Just mainly because it's as simple as this. If Texas had beaten Florida, I think it was, what did they end up being? 4-8, 5-8 Florida?
Yeah, at that.
Not 5-8, 5-7.
5-7, yeah.
Regardless, really, really bad football team.
Yeah.
This year. if you beat them and you're not one of their 2 power conference wins on the season, by the way, then you don't have this discussion. You're in the playoff. That was never a discussion or argument. You can blame and point fingers at that one game, or you can just go do your job in the other games, and you don't have to worry about complaining or pointing fingers in that Ohio State game. Because I think if they don't get blown out at Georgia, they probably have a better chance. But again, and people tell you that it's a 14-10 game going into the fourth quarter. That's true. But I think everybody knows that this college football playoff committee, every time they get in that room to do their job, that's exactly what they don't do. And so it didn't matter that it was 14-10 entering the fourth quarter of that Georgia game.
Right.
It didn't look close at the end, and that's really what they cared about.
Style points, yeah. The other part to that equation that's fascinating is that in some regards, and this is has to do with TV, what doesn't, right, when it comes to football. They keep pushing the narrative of we want each Saturday to have marquee matchups. Well, with all due respect, Florida playing FAU is not a marquee matchup. Georgia playing Georgia Southern isn't a marquee matchup. Alabama playing Troy isn't a marquee matchup. Ohio State playing Bowling Green isn't a marquee matchup. New Mexico and Texas Tech, not a big marquee matchup. So I don't know, but I have a feeling that television is going to drive that bus more than Steve Sarkisian's idea.
Yeah, and that is true. It's also just the direction that the sport as a whole is headed in. Discuss the likelihood of it moving into that more NFL model at some point in the future, where they have just essentially one big league with the different divisions, essentially going back to the old conferences in a sense. But people want to see marquee matchups, and that's good. I just caution how reasonable it is, especially as you continue to stretch these guys and their seasons out further and further. And for a calendar that already doesn't work for the student athlete or the coaching staffs, it's one where that needs to get taken care of first, because asking these guys to play, they're already bumping it up to 10. They're bumping up to 10 conference games. If you went and asked these guys to play 12 Power 4 games, and then go play another 4 playoff games, that's a lot. That's not even including a conference championship potential in there as well.
It's a long season.
I think Alabama's a decent case, and they've used it as an excuse, and I don't like using it as an excuse, because you recruit your roster a certain way, and it's got to be next man up and this, that, and the other. But you look at the way they played. I believe they had Wisconsin at home. They had Florida State. They had 9. They had their, what was it, 8? It was 8
conference games.
So they played 10 Power 4 games. And look at where they were when it came SEC championship time. And now, not to mention the fact that if they do make it, they'll have played the full brunt of the playoffs. They'll have played a first round game and then won the 2 other games to make it to the national championship. You're going to look up and be like, man, that's a lot of football that Alabama's played, and they've had a lot of injuries on that roster because they've played a lot of higher end competition.
Well, they're going out to they're going to go out to the Rose Bowl and beat Oregon.
Yeah. Indiana does await them in Pasadena, which is a different task of its own because of how well coached that Indiana football team is.
And they'll get a chance to go out early, which will be good for them. So they'll get acclimated to the time difference. And when you go to these bowl games and these playoff games, you don't really get as much time to practice. Most of it comes where you sit in rooms and look at film, and your position coaches talk about what it is. I don't think anybody wants to take get in there and do full blown practices at this time of the year. I mean, everybody's beat up. and you don't want to make it worse. They pretty much know what they have to do, and so they'll go out, they'll run drills and things like that. But as far as hard practice, they don't have to do any hard practice.
No, no, they'll do walkthroughs in like hotel ballrooms and stuff like that too.
Right. Yeah, which is always kind of fun to watch them scrimmage in the hotel ballroom. But anyway, well, let's move on for a second. Tomorrow we'll focus in on the rest of the games, but let's tool around the world of sports here for a couple of seconds we have left. We talked about the NFL, and we talked about what's going on there. We talked about college football. Uh, Baseball has been relatively quiet.
Yeah, this window is always generally the quiet window, though, when it comes to baseball. This is post-winter meetings, and now I think you're probably going to hit a little bit of a lull here for the next probably at least week in terms of the baseball news cycle. And once you get into the middle of January, I think things will kick back up in terms of the free agent markets and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think that it's going to be very interesting. This just in, by the way, came across Patriots star receiver Stephon Diggs faces strangulation charges, denies allegations. The star receiver is facing strangulation and other criminal charges in connection with a dispute with a former private chef that he had recently. So evidently, we're going to see what goes on. Chip Kelly is the new offensive coordinator of Northwestern's football team.
That was an interesting move. I know that he'd been in the building in Atlanta with Georgia Tech and Brent Key, and I think they had discussed the potential of him becoming the offensive coordinator there. That obviously didn't happen. Now he's at Northwestern. Chip Kelly himself is still a really good play caller. I would not give a lot of blame for what happened in Vegas this year to Chip Kelly, just because that offense is really bad, and Geno Smith really likes throwing it to the other team for some reason. And he did a really good job when he was at Ohio State last year. They won the national championship, and he's back at the college ranks where he's been really the most successful compared to his stints in the NFL.
Well, he tried. I mean, when he left Oregon and went to Philadelphia, he tried to run that up-tempo offense with an offense that didn't, have it hadn't been fixed to do that. And I remember the first game he coached regular season was against the Commanders, which back with them with the Redskins. In the first half of that game, they ran 62 plays.
Jeez.
In the second half of that game, they ran 24. They were absolutely exhausted trying to keep up with Chip, and it didn't work. He went out to UCLA. I don't think that was his fault out there. He had a pretty decent team out there. But they just didn't give him what they felt, what he felt they needed to give him. He went back to work with Ryan Day, who was on his staff, and helped get Ohio State's offense in gear. Moved on from there, and I guess the reason he didn't get another coaching gig is likely because of his age.
Yeah, I also wonder if I'm assuming you're talking about him taking another head coaching job.
Yeah, in college.
Yeah, I think it may just be more out of a personal desire of his. I don't think he wants to be a head coach again.
Maybe not.
I think he's happy being an offensive coordinator, and that's really just based on the fact that he chose to leave UCLA. I know there was some turmoil in terms of the athletic director and their funds and stuff like that out there, but I think it really falls on he's talked about how difficult it is to be a head coach in the college ranks right now. What all you have to do, and I think he's honestly just really happy being an offensive coordinator.
You know what? A lot of people do that, and I think that you could do a hell of a lot worse than having an offensive coordinator that isn't as talented as Chip is.
Yeah, and I also think he's probably just better at it at this point. I think he's probably a better coach when he is just an offensive coordinator than if he were to be a head coach.
Yeah. I mean, well, he can focus on that. That's all he has to worry about is the offense.
Yeah, I mean that's been his specialty. Offense has been his specialty. He's been a really good coordinator in the past, and he's been a good coordinator since he's switched back to that role. And so it's something that honestly just makes a lot of sense, especially you cited his age. I think his age plays a factor in him not wanting to be a head coach as well.
Quick heads up on the Steelers. TJ Watt looks like he's on track to be back to play Sunday against the Ravens. Did anyone doubt that TJ Watt would be not play in that game?
Absolutely not. Yeah, no. If he could walk, run, and had movement in all of his
extremities, yeah, he was going to play.
Yeah, there was no way he would not play in this football game.
Okay, now here is some really strong, stunning news. The number one player heading into the 2026 PGA Tour season is set to be Scotty Scheffler. Now, how hard would that have been to put that one down?
Yeah, no shock there. It is going to be interesting. He had a different season last year in terms of really when he hit his peak. These really when he was at his best in 24 compared to 25, it was early in the year, and that's really where he's done a lot of his winning throughout his career is early in the year. But he suffered a hand injury making pasta at Christmas last year. That led to him taking, I think it was somewhere in the neighborhood like 6 weeks off from golf entirely. And so it took him a little while to get revved back up. And I don't think he won it as much. He didn't win as much this year on the tour as he did in 24, but he got the majors that he didn't get in 24. And so it's a cliche headline everybody's pointed out since the Open, but he has a chance to go chase the career Grand Slam on I believe it's his birthday, no less, in Shinnecock.
There's no question. Let's close with this one, and this will be a good clip, having to do with the fact that Eldridge Tiger Woods is going to turn 50, which means that he can play in the Champions Tour. Now, right now, Tiger can putt and he can chip. He has not done much in the way of attempting to drive the ball. I don't see that he's going to be competitive on the PGA Tour. There's just too many broken parts on that body, and I don't think that Tiger wants to go out there and embarrass himself. That being said, I could see a reason to talk him into playing some of the senior tour events and perhaps perhaps even getting a few of the other guys involved. And it might be a very interesting situation if he could, if they could get him involved in the seniors tour.
Yeah, and not to be forgotten, he is a part of the Jupiter Links golf team for the TGL as well.
Right.
I believe it was a torn Achilles that he suffered most recently.
Yeah.
And that at the age of 49, now 50, it's a hard injury to come back from when you're in your 20s. I can't imagine what the recovery is like for his Achilles. So I'd imagine he'll take his time. But the golf swing still is what it is. Like that didn't change. It has evolved, but he's still got the same golf swing that made him the winner that it was. And the impact of not walking all 18 holes has a lot to do with your overall health and the ability to stay healthy.
Well, especially if you remember, before he had the car accident, which, by the way, he shattered both his ankles. They're surgically repaired. So he's on ankles that, are metal. That's number one. He had a back injury before. That didn't get
Yep.
much better.
Nope.
So his lower body basically is nowhere near what it has to be to be competitive. I mean,
Yeah.
your legs in golf are very important. You can have a great swing. Look, I love to watch Tiger. You know, I would sit down and watch Tiger play golf in, if he's playing miniature golf. I don't care. But you know, being 50 and having as many um, you know injuries as he's had at different parts of his body, it's could I see him go out there and shoot 71? Yeah, I could do. I could see him do that. Could I see him 3 days in a row? Probably not.
No. What was it? It was 2 years ago that he made 2 or 3 years ago he made the cut at the Masters.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that really kind of felt like a bit of a last hurrah there for Tiger in Augusta, because it's just not with the injuries he's sustained. He's not able to walk the full 72 holes. It's just not something you can do over a weekend.
Exhausting. Yeah.
Yeah, it's exhausting. You're walking, a few miles a day, not to mention the physical aspect of hitting the shots. And when you are as fragile as he is, really, in his lower body, because that's where you get a lot of your power from in the golf swing.
Sure.
Then you're just not able to be competitive over 4 days.
Yeah, the other thing too, and a lot of people don't realize it because they don't see it on TV, but you and I know this fact because we've been to most of these courses, and that is, even at Augusta, all right, Augusta is a pretty damn hilly golf course. It doesn't look like it on television, but it is. I mean, it really. There's a lot of places on that course where you've got 1 foot above the other foot, or you've got some situations where your lower body is really exposed to danger.
Yeah, Georgia, it's not the Rocky Mountains by any measure.
No,
but
no,
the state as a whole is incredibly hilly. And
right.
Talk about Augusta, like it's just, even if it's gradual, it's enough.
Oh yeah. I'm not talking about mountains. I'm just saying
Yeah.
that it's not. It looks flat on television. It's not flat.
That's what the elevation change is still very, very real and legitimate there at Augusta, because they are there are some mounds and some pretty substantial hills that they've built a couple of those holes on. You look at, I can't remember the number, but the par 5 that goes straight uphill pretty much, and cuts to the left.
9.
Yeah, and then I think it's 11 that's downhill. That's downhill and to the left too. That's got a pretty substantial elevation change as well.
Even 18.
Yeah. So there's plenty of holes that have that up and down movement, and yeah, it's incredibly difficult. It is incredibly difficult to walk 18 if it's flat in Florida, and it's a heck of a lot harder when you have a course like Augusta that plays into the hills that they have on their property.
Absolutely. All right. Any final thoughts before we get out of here today? Tomorrow we will be back and we will delve into New Year's Day and what's going on. We will be definitely off on New Year's Day because we want to make sure that you all have plenty of time to watch everything that's going on. But any thoughts before you get out of here on a Tuesday?
Yeah, I'll touch on this last little piece of golf news that we never really got to. Kind of happened over the holiday break. But Brooks Koepka left LIV.
Yes.
And appears to be, headed. You would assume he's probably going to try to play on the DP World Tour. But it appears that he's going to take that year-long suspension from the tour and attempt to rejoin once he's able.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, he's a hell of a golfer. And I think golf is better whenever you get your best players in there. And certainly he is. He's somebody that you really want to see back on the PGA Tour.
Yeah, I think he's somebody that wants to return to his major championship form as well.
Yeah, and I mean, LIV at the beginning was something unique, and I think now it isn't. And now that the PGA and the folks who are the driving force behind LIV have come to an understanding, I think that there's no real sense for that to happen anymore.
Yeah.
So we'll see. All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us. We had a lot of fun today, and we hope to see you tomorrow. Until then, for Matt, I'm Jim. Take care, everybody. How about it? I actually hit it today.